Ryan Glover. I wanted to do this video. I saw a post and it was basically Jay Mohr. He's an actor married to Jenny Buss from the Lakers, and he was interviewing Flava Flav. And in the interview, he asks, who Flava Flav thinks is the best battle rapper. He says basically Eminem is the best battle rapper. Nobody's touching Eminem. Then he says, Jay Mohr says, I think KRS-One is the best battle rapper. And, Flava Flav, backpedals. He don't want no smoke with KRS-One. Says basically they're both his homies. Whatever, they both are great battle rappers. And truth be told, man, Eminem is a good rapper. Don't get me wrong. He's a very great technical rapper. I don't feel that he's the greatest battle rapper. He's a very good battle rapper. Obviously, he's won some, very, respectable battles. And he's done it very well. I think, that he's showed, that he's clever. He has, memorable punchlines. All of, the key elements of a battle rapper. But keep in mind, Eminem has lost battles. Like most battle rappers have. I've lost battles. Eminem's lost to Juice. He's lost to Rhyme Fest from Chicago. I know a lot of people say that Rhyme Fest didn't really beat him, but Rhyme Fest is nice. I think personally and stuff that a lot of people slept on Rhyme Fest. His first album, in my opinion, I would say is a classic album. I think Rhyme Fest is a top tier MC. He's demonstrated that. I think Juice is a top tier MC as a catalog. Obviously they don't make commercial music, but they never had Dr. Dre's production, Interscope's promotion behind them. And I think that when it comes to Eminem, you kind of have to factor in the issue of white supremacy. And I think that because he's white, a lot of his fans who've never listened to Ron Fest or never listened to Juice or never listened to Benzino, who dropped Rap Elvis and basically talked about Eminem and brought up some real issues, some points that have depth. The fact that Eminem used racial epithets to describe a black woman, and Interscope basically used the crisis PR team to cover it up, to hide the fact, make it seem like he was younger than he was. Also, you got to take into consideration the fact that Eminem nearly lost that battle to MGK. Kill Shot is a vicious diss song, but MGK really came in Eminem's neck, and he brought up some character issues. I think that a lot of times that it's not necessarily about who is the most talented battle rapper, but who has more to say. And obviously Eminem, because he's been famous for so long and necessarily has had some character flaws in the past that is easier to make fun of some of his mistakes or some of the issues in battle rap. I think it's not necessarily about who's the most talented rapper when it comes to battle rap, but I don't think that Eminem is the best battle rapper. I don't think he's the best rapper of all time. He's a great rapper, don't get me wrong. But I think people are crazy, and this is the issue of white supremacy, where they start saying, you're telling me that Eminem is nicer than Jay-Z? You're telling me that Eminem is nicer than Nas? You're telling me that Eminem is nicer than Rakim? You're telling me that Eminem was nicer than Biggie? You're telling me that Eminem was nicer than Big L? You're telling me that Eminem was nicer than KRS-One? You're telling me that Eminem, he was nicer than all these people? And I like Eminem's music, man, especially when he first came out. I'm never going to say that he can't rap, he can't get busy or whatever, but I just don't think he's the greatest MC of all time. And that's not a diss to him. I feel as a battle rapper, he's okay. He's good. He's white, and I think that gives him extra points, and he's kind of been able to make a career, because there's a lot of white rappers who weren't nice that were able to have careers. Vanilla Ice, when you like listen to like, you know what I mean, Vanilla Ice obviously, and like how he was able to be successful and sell all these records, and he couldn't really rap. There, I could name, you know, so many black rappers like, you know, that were nice to them in that time period. You know, even today. So the fact, like, you know, that marginalized voices don't get heard, and I think that's like, you know, a point that Benzino addresses on Rap Elvis that's never been addressed. And he also brings up the point about Eminem not really being part of the culture. I mean, Benzino is accessible. Like, you know, I have a song with Benzino. He's come on my platform. He's done an interview with me. I'm not saying that Eminem has to do an interview with me, but it's kind of odd. Like, you know, he hasn't done an interview with DJ Vlad, who I would consider the top journalist in hip hop. Then there's people like Elliot Wilson, for instance. Why hasn't he done an interview with him? You know, there's people that really, he should be on their platforms and kind of like, you know, doing more in-depth interviews than these controlled interviews. And it's not necessarily to tear him down, but I feel like he has to answer some questions. Number one, the truth of the matter about calling a black woman out of her name. And like, I know, like, you know, he said he was young. He offered an apology for it. And that's fine. Like, you know, and people just let that go or let that slide. But why, like, you know, that he's so much of a recluse? Why, like, you know, that he doesn't, like, you know, interact more? Like, you know, he says he's, you know, a battle rapper. Why doesn't he support other battle rappers at the battle rap events? Another point that Eminem, I just, like, you know, don't see it as the GOAT. Like, you know, I feel like, you know, there's somebody, like, you know, who is going to be the GOAT, like, you know, represents hip hop and cares about the culture and moving it forward. And I can see that with Jay-Z. I can see, like, why somebody would say, like, Jay-Z is the GOAT of hip hop. And it's just like all the things that he's done, like, you know, to help artists. And I'm sure Eminem there's things he's done. I know he's done things in Detroit. And I know, like, you know, I'm cool with a lot of people in Detroit. They talk about, like, you know, him filming 8 Mile there and hiring them. But, like, you know, I think, like, a lot of that is just, like, white supremacy when people say, like, you know, Eminem is the greatest of all time. And that's just my personal opinion. Like, Eminem's not the greatest rapper of all time. And, yeah, man, like, I think Benzino washed him. And I know, like, a lot of people say, like, oh, like, he didn't respond because that was, you know, why would he respond to his ghostwriter? And, you know, that may be true. I don't know, because I know the song I did, like, you know, Mike the Rockman was saying, like, you know, that he had wrote it or whatever, which was a little, like, disappointing for me. But I like Benzino. I think he's a great rapper. I don't know if that's true. I think that, yeah, like, you know, people overhype Eminem, and I think, like, you know, that he does have a, like, amazing catalog of music. I grew up on, like, you know, especially his earlier albums, and he's dropped him some things in the past, like, you know, that shows that he's still, like, you know, a great MC. And if he dropped an album tomorrow, I would download it, stream it, whatever. I just think that he's not the greatest rapper of all time, and I think, like, you know, the people saying that are just casual rap fans, and it's really, like, you know, kind of bad for hip hop. And I think that's another point that Eminem makes on, that Benzino makes on Die Another Day, about the fact, like, you know, that it seems like, you know, that, like, a lot of, like, white rappers have come into hip hop, and it's just pretty much to replace the black artists. So, like, you know, that's kind of like what happened with rock and roll, because it's like, you know, like, all these white people started doing rock and roll, and now, like, you know, it's very few, like, black artists who are in rock and roll, you know, or even country for that instance. You know, Beyonce couldn't even get a country music award. So I just want to keep that in mind, man, like 10 years from now, and, you know, pretty much, like, you know, all the rappers in hip hop are white.